Hello, guys. Welcome again. My name is Bobby Dobb, again, principal at Gahanna Lincoln High School. This is going to be our second session for our Educational Leadership Academy. Hope everyone's doing well. Today, we're going to look at three areas of the book, Hacking Leadership. We're going to look at flattening your school walls. We're going to look at broadcasting student voices throughout your school and your community. And we're also going to look at centering school around our students. So what we'll do today, we'll go through some slides again, kind of like we did the first session. I will show you some things about the book and point out some areas of the book that are important. We'll look at some things that I've done, past experiences, some things that I'm going to do down the road, and we'll look at some areas where you could really start it tomorrow if you wanted to and really touch on the blueprint of the book again like we had before. At the end, we'll look at some things to prepare ourselves for our June session, which will be our final session. I think that'll be a really good one because what we'll do is we'll also finish the book and the last four hacks of the book, but we will also look at, and I'll show you some different tools that I use all the time that I think will help you, and you can learn them this summer and really kick off your next school year using those tools to increase your transparency and your communication. So let's take a look here at the first few slides, and we'll get going here. Okay, so we said we're going to look at these three areas today. Flattening the walls, really creating partnerships in our school, broadcasting the student voices. So really talking to our audience and going where they are, and then creating schools that are really meant for students. So the first thing, we start talking about flattening our walls. Many parents had bad experiences when they were in school. And so it's our job to get them back into an environment where they probably didn't enjoy it when they were in school, but we need to make it about a place that changing their perception of school and what it was. So some of the things that the book talks about, and also some of the things the last few years that I've grown accustomed to, is becoming a storyteller. So when we look at really being a principal, like I said before, I think in our first session, we really don't take classes on marketing and on branding and on storytelling, but that is a real big part of what we do. So when it comes to being a great storyteller, like the book says, there's three areas where we have to look at. We have to really let parents know what we are doing, why we're doing it, and we have to let parents know why it's the best thing for kids. So my own experience with that, as I told you before, I was principal at New Lexington in Southeast Ohio in Appalachia. And really, we were one of the first schools in the state, definitely in Appalachia, to go one-to-one with iPads. And so what we did, superintendent did a really good job of researching it, making sure that we had the funds secured for that. And then what we did, we went and visited Defiance High School up in Defiance, Ohio, and they already had a one-to-one program going with iPads. And so what we did, we took a group of stakeholders up there. So we had some board members, we had some parents, we had some teachers, and we went up there. It was a long drive, and it was a good visit, though. We went up and ins and outs, some things that were positive and some things that they would do differently the next time, or if they ever had a chance to do something like that again. So what we were able to do with that information, and why I share that story, is because we brought it back to our parents, and we had parent meetings at New Lexington. And you can imagine the place in Appalachia, Ohio, where funds were very scarce. We told them we were going to buy these resources, really lease the resources, and we were going to collect a certain amount of money from each student for as an insurance policy. So we really had to explain to the parents why we were doing it, what we were going to do, and why it was the best thing for kids. So we had the parent meetings to explain what we were doing, and when we did that, we had the superintendent there, myself, and also our technology director. And so before we went into that, those first few meetings, the three of us would meet and we would talk about some of the possible questions we're going to get. We would talk about how we were going to explain certain areas. We even went in to talk about who was going to explain certain areas when it came to parent questions, or really how we were presenting it. We thought it was even that important, really, whose voice was coming out when it came to talking to parents about that. So while we also had the parent meetings and we would share information on why we were doing it, we had research and we had other schools' experiences. We used videos to our advantage. Now, remember, this is about 7 years ago, 7 years ago. So this was really when this stuff was first getting out there, and a lot of people weren't really familiar with how powerful it was and how schools were using it as resources. So we really had some of the early research on it to use with parents. And probably the biggest thing was to explain why it was the best thing for kids. So when we did that, we really had to explain to them and explain to our staff that we were using them as resources. And so our thing was always, superintendent made sure the budget was set where we could do this for at least 3 years, the resources that we had. So it really wasn't costing the taxpayers any money. We were going to lease the devices. And so explaining that to them was important, because they were able to carry our message throughout the community that, hey, they're not asking for any money. They're not going to raise taxes. They're not going to have a levy. They have the money set aside. They did a good job budgeting it. And then we were able to show them what the resources could do. So what we did there is we had students come in, and we had students that knew how to use the devices. And this was probably a month into it. We would have certain meetings, like maybe at parent-teacher meetings or board meetings. We'd have students come in and present how they were using the resources. So as the book said, when it comes to these type of things, when you're talking about a storyteller, building social capital is very important. So when you can build that social capital, you have that foundation to try new things and change. And so that's what we were doing. We're at New Lexington was building that social capital, so we could try something different and give the kids different types of resources. So another area that's very important when it comes to being a storyteller and doing it successfully is that transparency piece. So when it comes to transparency, if you see a lot of times my Instagram account or my Twitter account, along with my staff and the school's account, we take a lot of pictures and videos and we share our story all the time, which a lot of other places do. That's nothing new. But when you look at that important quote there, and it also explains it in the book, transparency leads to trust, which helps build social capital that leads to transformation. So we're firm believers that we have to be transparent. In order to be transparent, we have to show everybody what we're doing, and that'll let them trust us more, which can build that social capital that allows us to do different things when it comes to transformations. So if we talk about starting tomorrow, I think it's really important to look at some of the things that are going on in your community. So when we look at starting tomorrow, I think it's key to say that we got to find out where stakeholders spend their time. So we talked about this in our first session. We talked about where do they spend their time. Maybe we should create a survey and figure that out. Maybe we create the survey on a Google form and ask them what social media, what applications do they use in order so we can find out where they are. So that's where we can push our information. Like I've always said, you're not going to use YouTube if 3% of your parents are on YouTube. It's going to be, hey, where are we? A lot of them are on Facebook. Well, then guys, let's push our message out to Facebook. That's where they are. So I have a story there about when I used video newsletters. So it was my time in New Lexington. I did a little bit at Gahanna, but I started creating video newsletters with students in the school. Actually, they were the ones creating it. They would go around and get interviews from coaches, from teachers, go into classrooms. That was probably the most powerful portion of it was the fact that teachers would get interviews, and a lot of our parents didn't know who these teachers were sometimes. And so they were able to learn a lot about our staff and really see inside the building and what it was made of. The thing is when I got to Gehanna, we tried it, and I got feedback from parents that said, "Hey, we're not watching the videos. The videos are too long. Can you just share the information in an electronic newsletter? That way I can look at it and refer back to it. I don't need to load up a video." Different comments like that. So that's what we did. We kind of abandoned that and just went back to electronic newsletters, but we made our newsletters a little bit more powerful by including different social media aspects into the newsletters. So I think it's important to find out where your stakeholders are. Posting activities, like it says in the book, that's a good idea. So all my activities for my building, even though it's quite large, they're on my calendar, and so I know where to be, or if I can get there. And then when I go, I have an idea what I'm going to do, whether I'm going to record video, whether I'm going to take pictures and tweet it out immediately. I have a game plan before I go in. So the reason I do that is so I can focus on what to promote to our stakeholders and our parents. Leveraging hashtags is big. So they talk about it in the book, but really, when we meet in June, I'll show you how I leverage hashtags, especially using Storify, where even if parents aren't on Twitter or Facebook, we can show them those hashtags inside of an electronic newsletter, or even inside of a Word document, and they can see tweets even if they don't have a Twitter account. So that's Storify. That's huge for that, because you'll hear a lot, well, you can't tweet out everything because parents, although parents or students are on Twitter, but when you can use something like Storify, it'll help you get your message out, and people realize, oh wow, so that's what Twitter is, and they'll be able to see all the tweets that you include in the hashtag. All right, so the next thing we'll look at is maybe some pushbacks that we get sometimes, and they talk about that in the book, that you always have to be prepared for types of pushback, which we talked about our first session. Sometimes in this profession, we know we have to have thick skin, so sometimes we can't really get focused on the pushback. We have to really keep going forward with what we want to do when it comes to the transformations we're going to make. So when we look at the blueprint, I really like in the book how they talk about the blueprint. You guys know that. I mentioned that in the first session. So we look at three things, and then we'll look a little bit about that momentum and how we build it. But connecting online tools for ease. So I have a link on there. If you don't have an Instagram account, you should really get one. So what I've been doing lately is using Instagram. And when you use Instagram, you'll find out that you can link it very easily to Facebook and Twitter. So instead of really going and trying to use Twitter and Facebook and bouncing around saying, oh, I'm getting confused with all the apps I'm using, start with Instagram. You can use video and take images and pictures and put text in there, and then it connects very easily to your Twitter and your Facebook, and you just hit one button and it links to them, so your Instagram will post to your Twitter and your Facebook. So we like to set out a goal and plan rollouts. So when we do this, especially when I was at New Lexington and we first started doing it, we let everybody know what we were planning on doing, and we were sharing positive experiences. And I tried to stay away from the athletic field. We focused on classroom experiences. So it really gave parents a way to get in there and see what was going on inside the school, and it made us look very transparent. We didn't care that people could see what was going on inside the classroom in the building. Building that momentum. We talked about Storify and how that can really help you share your posts. We also put our social media accounts on our school webpage. I know some people frown at that, but I'm telling you, you should really look into doing that and making it happen, because again, you have people that don't have social media accounts, but yet they'll still be able to see what you're doing on social media. Giving that momentum. So again, the book talks about some great things: letting students control your social media account for your school, which hey, I always tell people kids surprise us all the time, and kids are fascinating. Sometimes we think, oh, we think of the bad things, but we should always think of the good things. And it always takes me back to when we started at iPads in New Lexington, and everyone said, oh, well, they'll go and sell the iPads to people, and they'll destroy them, and the kids won't utilize the tools, and they won't take advantage of them, and all that stuff was all hype. The kids, some of the kids, that was the only device that they've ever had in their lives, and when kids would leave the devices around town, businesses would call us and we would come pick them up. If we can do it down there, you can do it anywhere. So I think sometimes you can't let things stop you like that. Retweeting and reposting student tweets. So I don't follow kids on those social media accounts, but when they tag me, if it's appropriate, I'll retweet it and favorite it. And kids get a big kick out of that. So they know if they spread a positive message, I'll share that with everybody else. Contests are really big. So they talk about it in the book. So at New Lex, we always had something called College Knowledge Week. So I don't know if I talked about it in the first session, but we had to really increase students taking ACT, increase ACT scores, and getting kids on college campuses, thus to colleges. We had an issue with that down there, that kids, not enough kids were going to college, and they weren't even attempting to go to college. So we needed to get them prepared with all the areas to get to college, and let alone succeeding there. You can't be a success in college if you're not there. So we always had to try. We were building that foundation. So we had something called College Knowledge Week. We did it twice a year, and we focused contests on my staff and some of their college experiences and their backgrounds. And then I would post contests on social media and give prizes to kids. And then, mind you, again, this was a few years ago, right, when kids were just starting to get on Twitter, and we had a lot of kids in that area of the state that were on social media that probably, a lot of other places they weren't doing it, but we were utilizing it. Like example, I would only put the questions on Twitter. So if kids didn't have a Twitter account, they were making Twitter accounts in order to get a pizza party for their friends during lunch or something like that. So it was good. It was a good way to use social media. I told kids the only way they could answer was responding back on Twitter, things like that. So it really works, and people were seeing that, and then I could storify that, or I'd share it on our video newsletter. Another little trick, which I think you guys know that I do, at least on my school account, is I put my social media network addresses in my email signature. So every time I send an email, it's at the bottom of the email, and people see it. They can click on the links right there. I talked about a little bit earlier, overcoming that pushback. So talk about build momentum for staff to join. We have to highlight what we're doing with the staff, and then highlight the staff themselves and what they do in the classroom. So I'm a big proponent of that, is really getting the staff involved in building that momentum through them. And then, I always hear this, you're always on your phone. Well, a lot of times I'm doing different things on my phone, like I told you guys before, responding to emails. If I'm in a classroom, it may look like I'm texting, but what I'm doing most of the time is typing out what I see, and what teachers are doing well, and then some opportunities for growth. And I'm sharing that with the teachers, along maybe with some pictures that I'm taking in the class. So don't let that stop you. People say, well, you're always on your phone, or that, he's always on his phone. I mean, we use it for different reasons. It's a tool to use, just like, having technology in the classroom is. So to sum it up, I think with this area of the book, with this hack, you got to get parents to buy into your school. And the way to do that, it's really focusing on three things. Tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and that what you're doing is best for kids. You do those three things. I don't care if you do it in a paper newsletter. If people are reading that newsletter, if you can do those three things, you'll get people buying in. I think you got to use connecting the online tools. So as I suggested, I think if you're just getting into this, I would use Instagram and really connect your Twitter and your Facebook to Instagram. It's important to have that plan and rollout, and then obviously to build that momentum, which we talked about. All right, so next we're going to get into broadcasting student voices. So when we talk about the plan, that the educational leadership success plan that we have at the end, you'll notice doing that, I cut those down to really show examples of one method you're going to maybe use this year and into next year, because these next two hacks of the book, they're a little bit more difficult because you really have to get a lot of buy-in from kids and from staff members. I don't know about a lot of buy-in, but you have to get some buy-in. And so sometimes, when it comes to, we'll talk about podcasts, when it talks about using different apps like Periscope, I really think it's important to go slow with those and not try to use a bunch of them at the same time, because you'll get people confused and lost a little bit. So let's take a look here. When it comes to appealing to our audience, you'll notice there I have a couple links. We need to be storytellers, but so do our students. So I talk about creating a podcast. I also talk about it in the book, and then using Periscope. So really creating a podcast, I have a link there that shows you how to do that. They're free and they're easy to do. You can just do them with a phone. I think once you learn more about it, especially something I know I'm going to get into next year again, I'm going to try to do this and kids are going to do it. And it's kind of like my video newsletters, but I'm going to have short snippets with staff members and coaches and kids and post them online, kind of like they talk about in Hacking Leadership. And so we'll just have a directory of them, an archive of them, but I really want to get our message out more, and I'm going to have kids doing it. Same with Periscope. I've used that a lot in the past at New Lexington, and what we did was we're just walking in classrooms taking live video. You could do the same thing with Facebook Live, but Periscope, and it's nice too, because once you do it, then it'll post to Twitter. You can post it to Facebook automatically, and then people that maybe aren't watching the video live, they can pick it up what went on there. But kids can do that too. So really, the blueprint to appeal to our audience and really broadcast student voices. Your audience, as we said earlier, I think we talked about that in the first session back in April. You got to find out where they are. Then you got to create a process to get other people involved. And so again, we get back to our Google Forms and our Google surveys, very powerful tools that we can use to get others to sign up to create podcasts or ask for a classroom visit. So we talk about that. We try to get teachers to ask for these classroom visits so we can come in and use the tools, or maybe students can use the tools in order to showcase what the staff's doing. Creating a team of staff and students. So I think it's important that you as the leader, you're not going to take this on your own. What you're going to do is really get other people involved. When you get other people involved, they'll generate ideas and you can really let them take off with it. Now, the most important thing, and I think I talked about this in our first sessions, you got to go slow with this stuff. That's why I said, man, pick one of them. Don't try to pick three. Just pick one of them. And maybe you don't want to broadcast everything, or maybe you don't feel a need to do it every day, but just set yourself a moderate goal and really let your parents know, hey, we're going to do this maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. So check it out, and you'll find out more information and really find out more what's going on in the school. So when we get to talk about pushback, you may see this in elementary sometimes. Oh, we can't let kids do that. They'll take advantage of it, or they'll post inappropriate things. I talked about it very early in our session here that your kids will surprise you. So don't get caught up in that. You're just exploiting kids. Sometimes I get people telling me, well, you're letting kids tell your story, and you're really putting kids out there trying to make you look better. No, I'm letting kids tell the story, but I'm letting them tell the story, and it makes our staff look better. It has nothing to do with me. So we're sharing great work. We're telling a story. We're transparent in what we do. I focus on those three things. So sometimes it's kind of repetition when people ask me about that. And it doesn't really happen much anymore. Now it's just an expectation. But before it was always, well, we're telling a story. We're sharing great work that we do. We want to be transparent with the parents and let them know the great things that are going on in their school. So to sum up this one, it's a very short hack in the book when you talk about student voices and appealing to our audience. But you got to find easy ways to be storytellers. So we got to get more people involved. It's just not the principles. And don't worry about that pushback, because we have to focus on the positives that you're sharing. So we talked about this in the first session as well, is that that pushback and having thick skin. If you're doing the right thing and you're letting people know why you're doing it and why it's the best for kids and what you're doing, like I told you, you're not going to get much kickback because you're really explaining and communicating the great things that you're doing. And also, that final one there is you got to create a plan that's based on baby steps. You just have to in order to be successful. So we look at schools that are based for kids here on our final hack, and this is really the most difficult one because even 10, 15 years ago in education, you and I, we just didn't go to schools that were based on kids. We went to schools that are based on adult centered and what's the best thing for adults. And you'll read about that in the book, how they really focus on schools that are based on adult needs instead of students' needs. So this hack, again, it's really building a culture in your school. And so when I was at New Lexington, we started to focus more on student-led learning. And it was very difficult, especially the lower the levels you went, because a lot of times teachers said, well, I can't do this with kindergartners or first graders. They can't lead their own learning. But it's not always about leading their learning. A lot of times it's about getting that voice and choice and letting students know that we care about them, we respect them, and we want to know what they think in order for them to have a better place to come learn. So it's really based on culture, and then it builds up from there. So let's take a look at a few of these areas. The book does a very good job of talking about this. As I said, we have to stop organizing our schools based on adult priorities or what we want or what the needs are. I love how the book really talks about student-centered schools in really 4 areas the student-centered schools do a great job of. They nurture collaboration. So we model it as leaders. Our teachers model it. We collaborate together and with our kids. We advocate for kids. So it's not about, I'm the one in charge. It's about, hey, I want to work with you, or I want the best for you. We advocate for kids in and out of the school. We have to have adults in student-centered schools that don't always have to love them, but we have to like kids and respect kids. That's huge. We have to do that because, as you and I both know, when we were in school, that didn't always happen with teachers and that student-teacher relationship. Adults who teach in a way that matter to kids. So it's important to really in your delivery in a way that gets all kids involved. We know that that's just great teaching. So I like in the book how they talk about some things to start tomorrow or how you can start tomorrow doing it. Ask students what they want their role to be in the school. So how do they want their voice heard? So the book does a great job of asking kids, hey, maybe, having a lunch bunch or a group come in and maybe having a survey or maybe going around and asking different groups of students, what do you think your role is? How do you want to be heard? So the 2 and 3, I'm real big on voice and choice. So I have on there say, yes. I think I've talked to you in the first session about how I rarely say no. I'm not telling you I don't, but I rarely do because I want our culture to be, hey, let's try this. Or I want to go tell Mr. Dog we're doing this. I don't want to ask him. So we try to give students a lot of voice and choice. Number 3 is the biggest one, I think, where we're going in our society when it comes to education. We're not there yet, but it's big. It's giving kids voice and choice in curriculum. So New Lexington, like I said, we started doing that, and we do it a lot at Gehenna as well. As we started finding small success stories, finding teachers that did it well and having them share during staff meetings or maybe writing a blog about them and the things they're doing. So we recognize them. In one of the examples was at New Lexington, we used to let kids be a part of making the rules or procedures in the classroom. Kids really got a big kick out of that. And then when they did that, they were the ones that, hey, you made the rules. So if you're making the rules, you got to follow them. And we were always very sure that we made And we were very deliberate. There were only 4 or 5 rules. It wasn't like there were 20 class rules. So we did that and made them very broad and deliberate. But once that started, then a lot of the teachers started letting them help with designing the curriculum and how it was presented, and also how they were assessed. So there's always pushback for this one. That's why I talked about this is the most difficult one. So a lot of times administrators, and this is the most popular one, teachers aren't just ready for it, because a lot of them aren't. So we had some training at New Lexington on how to do these type of things. I'm not telling you everybody bought in, but it's important. The book makes a great point, maybe starting with assessments. So assessments are always the easiest way to do it if you have a teacher with an open mind. Kids will come up with a lot of ways where they can be assessed. And then we always told the teachers, hey, it's up to you to finally approve it. So if you didn't think a student was assessed appropriately by the method they chose, and they got to go back to the drawing board. So it was great to see kids using iPads and creating videos to show their teachers what they know. So we always had a philosophy of show what you know. So some teachers would use different types of presentation tools. That was back when Prezi came out. So a lot of kids would use Prezi on the iPads and present to the entire class maybe what they took from the unit, and the teacher would assess it and had rubrics created for it. A lot of kids, like I said, used videos. Some kids just use regular tests like they've always had, just paper pencil tests. But we had teachers who were really getting out there and showing the other staff members there are other ways to assess kids than just by giving them a paper and a pencil. So one of the things you'll hear a lot of my kids are in elementary school, they can't do that. Well, there's other ways, just like the book said, to get voice and choice from elementary students. I mean, look at the food at the school, or about recess, or about some of the areas in the school that need improvement. Get kids' input. Even elementary kids know when they're being listened to and when they're being advocated for and respected. What about my content? What about getting through my standards? That was another thing that happened, that and still does to this day. And I try to, that's about culture. You got to set a culture of, it's about learning. It's not about getting through standards. It's not about getting great test results. It's about a culture of learning. And that is so important. You have to do that, because if you don't, you'll still get teachers that want to focus on standards and getting through material. So for this one, to sum it up, creating a student-centered school, like I said, it's difficult and it's important, but you have to advocate for kids, respect kids, and work with kids. Starting that student voice and choice and creating that, modeling that collaboration, it's big. So you got to get student input. You got to go small, but you also have to work with others in the building to show students and staff how it's done. If that is PD, or if that's really maybe getting into some team meetings or TBTs or PLC times or department chair meetings and showing people how it's done, then that's what you need to do. But you're going to have to make some sacrifices in order to do that. So as we look here, looking here at the last few slides, what we're going to do is really focus on what we're going to tackle for in June. I'm going to talk a little bit about the success plan that we have, and then the resource documents updated. So even if you didn't have the hacks read for this session today, you can go back and read those. I included a few more other resources you can read in order to give you some more information on that. When it comes to June, we're going to look at some very specific things in June. I think it's going to be a pretty powerful workshop for you. So while we will finish up the rest of the book and the hacks and talk about some ways that you can really roll through the summer and start some things next year. Like I said, I'll show you some areas, some tools, some resources that I use that I think will help you guys to get ready for next year and really be transparent. Like I said, is the main thing that we should be. So as you can see, I included in the success plan hacks 4, 5, and 6 assignments that you should be taking care of. And then in the session documents, there are some more resources in there that you can use. So we look at here our last session in June. So we'll finish the rest of the book, which is pages 95 through 150, hacks 7, 8, 9, 10. we'll be finishing up that educational leadership success plan. So again, even if you're not taking the class for credit, I believe that you should do it because it's going to help you really finish out the rest of this year and get ready for next year and down the road. I'll be sending out more things in emails this coming month here, this last month before the last session. And then, like I said, we're going to dig deeper into some tools that I like to use. It's really going to be hands-on, more me coming around and helping you, and really us helping each other and sharing ideas on ways that we can use all these hacks and make us all better. Not just me telling you, but we'll have some discussions about how we can use them and make ourselves better leaders. Okay, guys. Well, I hope you got something out of this session. Again, if you haven't read the hacks in the book yet, I really suggest that you do. I think, like I said, that last hack, it's difficult to do. I mean, it's something that, like I said, I only trying one method of each one, maybe for the end of the year or over the summer, because it's something you build in your culture, and it's something that takes a little bit of time. So take it slow and take baby steps. And I think you'll see some progress with it, especially when it comes to building that school-centered, student-centered school for kids, and then also broadcasting the student voice. What it's going to do is it's going to make you look transparent, like we've been talking about, and you're really going to get that social capital that you've been looking for to get a lot more people on board and let them see the great things you're doing in your school. So again, you have my contact information. You need to contact me at all, let me know. And Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, some of you guys are getting on there and contact me, which is good. You can send me an email. But again, if you have any questions here over the next month, let me know. See you.